Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Hey, Jack, what's happening? I don't know. Well, rumor around town says you might be thinking about going down to the shore. Yeah, I think I'm going to go down to the shore. What you going to do when you get down there? I don't know. Play some video games, buy some Def Leppard t-shirts. Don't forget about your Motley Crue t-shirts. You know, all proceeds go to getting their lead singer out of jail.
Blah, 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 blah. Welcome to episode 124 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 124, I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the ups and the downs, the highs, the lows, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. Before we get into it, I got two things that I got into, that I finished at any rate. Saw all of Loki 2, which was amazing.
Loki 2 is exceptional, yeah.
Outstanding from start to finish on that one. And Obi is my favorite character. I love Obi.
Oh, yeah.
Short round.
Yes.
I love that. So that was great. And then I saw the Marvels in the movie theater.
Okay.
So before I say anything about the movie, I have to say that I am a little spoiled from the movie theater options I had in DFW. Because the movie theater here is just not that good. There's another movie theater about 40 minutes away, which we may try if construction gets any better, but it was just not very comfortable seats and everything like that. But the movie itself, The Marvels, is good.
Yeah.
You really need to watch WandaVision, Captain Marvel, and Miss Marvel.
Mhm.
If you really want to fully enjoy this, I thought that the actress that plays Miss Marvel stole the show.
Mhm.
Thought she's just amazing.
Isn't she great?
She's awesome. She's awesome.
Isn't she great?
The one thing that I didn't like about the film, I thought that the mid-film musical sequence was out of place.
Oh, there was a mid-film musical sequence?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. And I felt that was kind of funny,
Yeah.
but I just felt it was out of place for a Marvel movie.
A little too jarring.
Yeah. Yeah, a little too much. So
But it was good.
the film overall was good. I enjoyed it. It was
I mean, the musical sequence itself was good. It just was wrongly placed. Like maybe if they'd have put it at the end, it would have been better.
No, I don't think it belonged in the movie at all. It's part of the storyline as to why there's a musical piece, a musical number. It's part of the storyline, but I still felt it was out of place, and I thought we could have done without that part. So,
okay.
But other than that, worth seeing. I will see it again. Definitely go see it.
I will reserve judgment till I go see it. I probably ought to go check that bad boy out. I may do that this next week.
Anything new you got?
No, not really. I mean, we were well, by the time this airs, we'll have already done it. We're doing some crossover stuff with Two Geeks and a Microphone and Three Geeky Dads. The Two Geeks and a Microphone, their 200th episode, and I'm doing a Doctor Who special.
I saw that. I found that out on Facebook. I can't believe you didn't tell me that. I found it out this morning on Facebook.
I thought you were in the chat. You are more than welcome to come.
No, that's for y'all.
You were invited. I think I just forgot to add you.
No, y'all do such a great job with that. You did great on the last one. I think it's going to be great. So no, I wouldn't have as much to add on that. So have fun with that. Enjoy it. Can't wait to be a part of their 200th episode, and can't wait to have Mike on for an episode that we've got coming up. Is it a two-parter?
It is a two-parter. Yeah, because we were talking about glam metal and / hair metal, and I couldn't put it all in one episode. It's got to be two.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, without anything else, Zig, I will let you take over on the nerdy side of the house.
Awesome. Okay. Before I start this, I need to borrow the Podback machine for just a second. It is September of 1986. And as we said before, I was really kind of into jazz, and then I got introduced to The Cure and some of the other types of music. There was this kid on the bus, Eric, who was playing some he liked hair metal as well. I mean, he kind of turned me on to Def Leppard's Pyromania, which I thought was a great album. But he started listening to this other stuff. It was the Dead Kennedys. And I'm like, okay, that's really weird and funny. He's like, oh, yeah. You think those guys are funny. What you need to do is get their newest album, Plastic Surgery Disasters, in the Dead Milkmen's Big Lizard in My Backyard. And when he said it, I just started laughing because that was the funniest name for an album I'd ever heard. So I go down to Sound Warehouse on Camp Bowie, and I go and pick up a vinyl copy of Big Lizard in My Backyard. They don't have Plastic Surgery Disasters by the Dead Kennedys. They were just out. But they do have Let It Be by The Replacements. And I love that album cover. So I bought both of those albums that day because I was going to buy two records regardless. And I took them home and I listened to Let It Be, and it was all right. It wasn't until later that I really got into that album, even though I owned it. Big Lizard in My Backyard by the Dead Milkmen, I thought was one of the funniest things I had ever heard at 13 years old. I thought it was great that it was music, but it was also humor. Because, as you know, I was a real big proponent of humor at the time. And you know, I was listening to basically jazz. But this stuff kind of struck a chord with me and has been with me my whole life. I even turn my kids on to the Dead Milkmen, and they think it's funny too.
I barely consider them music.
Watching Scotty Die gets played in my house all the time from the album Bucky Fellini. So we're going to talk about their first three albums. Big Lizard in My Backyard, Eat Your Paisley, and Bucky Fellini. I owned Number 1 and number 3. I owned Big Lizard in My Backyard on vinyl and Bucky Fellini when it first came out. I didn't own Eat Your Paisley because the kid up the street from me, Christina, had Eat Your Paisley, so we would, listen to it together. But yeah, so I take it you listened?
Yes.
You're not a fan?
No.
Not even Bitchin' Camaro?
No, I hate Bitchin' Camaro. I hate Bitchin' Camaro because I had this guy that I knew in high school that I hung out with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when that song came out, all I'd hear from him constantly was Bitchin' Camaro, Bitchin' Camaro.
I ran over my neighbor.
I got so fucking tired of hearing that shit and listening to it. Just I can't stand it. I can't stand this group. I can't stand this group. Can't stand this group. Can't stand them. Nope.
Not at all.
No.
Oh, okay.
I think they have nothing redeeming.
You don't even think they're funny?
No.
I love these guys. I love these guys for the same reason I love the Violent Femmes and They Might Be Giants. They're funny. They're musical. They're kind of crazy.
No, They Might Be Giants is funny and musical. These guys are stupid.
Well, the Dead Milkmen is an American punk rock band formed in 1983 in Philadelphia. Their original lineup consisted of vocalist and keyboardist Rodney Linderman, or Rodney Anonymous, guitarist and vocalist Joe Gennaro, Joe Jack Talcum, bassist Dave Schultze, Dave Blood, and drummer Dean Sabatino, Dean Clean. So back in the day, if you were in a punk band before like 1985, you didn't use your own name. You used the weird name. Everybody did it. They stopped doing it because it's kind of dumb. Which is why you get Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious and Dean Clean. The band distinguished itself from its hardcore punk scene of the early 80s through its jangly punk sound and sardonic humor delivered with thick Philadelphia accents. And when I say thick Philadelphia accents, they mean it. These guys sound like they have cheesesteaks in their hand while they're singing.
Sound like they have stupid in their hands while they're singing.
Geoffrey's not a fan. Was it Clayton?
Yeah.
Okay, Clayton that was into it. Okay.
Yeah.
See, yeah, that's true. Clayton and I have discussed the weird punk stuff before. That makes sense. Okay. Love you, Clayton. They attracted college radio attention with their 1985 debut album, Big Lizard in My Backyard, and the song Bitchin' Camaro. Extensive touring and further releases helped the band garner an underground following. The band enjoyed international success on the strength of Punk Rock Girl, which was a hit.
Maybe they should have stayed underground.
They went back to being underground shortly after that.
They didn't stay there long enough.
A single from their 1988 album, Beelzebubba, which got MTV radio play. You don't like Punk Rock Girl either, do you?
No.
Yeah, Punk Rock Girl is their is their most commercial song, but it is still funny. The group reunited in 2008 with Dan Stevens replacing Dean Clean because Dean died in 2011. They released The King in Yellow, their first studio album in 16 years. The band remains active thereafter, touring sporadically and releasing further records. They just released one last year. I love it. I think it's awesome. They were real big on the Philadelphia's punk rock circuit and eventually began touring nationally. After several self-released cassettes, their debut LP, Big Lizard in My Backyard, was issued in 1985 on Restless Records, a subsidiary of Enigma. The album received college radio play for the track Bitchin' Camaro. It became especially popular because of its improvised dialogue intro, which you probably heard part of in The Stab. So after that, they released Eat Your Paisley, and there was actually a video and a single, The Thing That Only Eats Hippies. It became their first proper single, even though Bitchin' Camaro was kind of a single. And it received domestic attention as well as Australia. And then in 1987, they released Bucky Fellini, yielding the single instant club hit You'll Dance to Anything, a genre spoof of electronic dance music. And they really spoof electronic dance music in You'll Dance to Anything. The Big Lizard in My Backyard. The album yielded no singles that achieved enough notoriety to create a fan base for the band. 5 of the album's tracks appear on the 1997 compilation Death Rides a Pale Cow, which is the best compilation name I've ever heard.
So they had shitty albums and then released a shitty compilation. Okay, I'm with
God,
you. I got you. I'm with you.
I wish, Big Lizard in My Backyard on vinyl, that first pressing, which I had, is actually kind of rare and expensive. I wish I still had it.
Crap. Gosh, I'm opinionated on this one.
Yeah, I see that. So the song listings are Tiny Town, Beach Song, Plum Dumb, Swordfish, VFW, Rastabilly, Serrated Edge, Lucky, Big Lizard in My Backyard, Gorilla Girl, Bitchin' Camaro, Filet of Soul, which is kind of a jazz track, which is weird, Spit Sink, Violent School, Taking Retards to the Zoo, Junkie, Right Wing Pigeons, Dean's Dream, Laundromat Song, Nutrition, and Tagunia, which is an instrumental. Again, I memorized this album because I thought it was funny, and it wasn't just because of Bitchin' Camaro. My favorite song on the album is actually Big Lizard in My Backyard, because it's like, Big Lizard in my backyard, can't afford to feed it anymore. Big Lizard in my backyard, and it always is such a bore. And you should see the way it shits. It just cracks me up. I love this album. And I've loved this album since I was 13. But apparently Geoffrey does not. So was it the fact that you didn't like it and it got driven into your brain? Or do you not like it because it was driven into your brain?
Well, Bitchin' Camaro for sure, because it was driven into my brain and I got tired of hearing it. But and so I never listened to anything more of theirs. But when you decided to do this episode, I went ahead and listened to the 3 albums, and I liked them even less.
Wow. You didn't see, I figured you would like Bucky Fellini a little bit more.
No, I liked him less.
You liked him less. Even watching Scotty die, you didn't think that one was funny?
No.
No, that one plays a lot in my house. The next album is Eat Your Paisley. Again, it's the second studio album. It was released on Restless Records in 1986. The Thing That Only Eats Hippies and Beach Party Vietnam were included on the 97 compilation Death Rides a Pale Cow. Hippies appears on the 1998 compilation Cream of the Crop. The album was produced by John Wicks, Dave Reckner, and the band, and a video was shot for the Thing That Only Eats Hippies. In the Thing That Only Eats Hippies, the band chides Bob and Greg and Grant, "You should beware," a reference to Husker Du's Bob Mould, Greg Norton, and Grant Hart. Trouser Press wrote that the group's wacky observations of stereotypes and artifacts are vague and astute. The music is expandable, but never less than presentable. The Globe and Mail wrote, the band play okay, but sing execrably. I think they sing like shit, I think is what they were trying to say in a very
They do sing like shit. It's terrible music.
They do kind of sing like shit. I'll give you that. They're not great singers.
No.
Neither one, but I like them. The tracks for Eat Your Paisley are Where the Tarantula Lives, Air Crash Museum, KK Suck 2, 50 Things, Happy Is, Beach Party Vietnam, I Hear Your Name, 2 Feet Off the Ground, The Thing That Only Eats Hippies, 6 Days, Swampland of Desire, Take Me Apart, Earwig, Moron, The Fez, and Vince Lombardi Service Center.
Did you say KK Sucks too?
Yeah, KK Suck 2.
Maybe they should have named this album We Suck.
My favorite on this one is Happy Is. I love that one.
I was happy when I didn't have to listen to it anymore.
Good God. You really do not like this band. Nothing at all. You didn't like one single song.
I didn't think there was any redeeming value in any of it.
Okay.
I hated my life to have to listen to this list.
Oh my God!
I wondered if there would ever be anything good in my life again after having listened to that.
Wow, dude! I don't think any of the 3 of these albums is longer than 40 minutes.
No, they're not. Thankfully, they're short songs. I was able to get through it quickly.
The third album, Bucky Fellini, was released in 1987 by Enigma. The album peaked at number 163 on the Billboard 200. The album produced one single, instant club hit, You'll Dance to Anything. An EP was released containing the singles and multiple mixes, as well as previously unreleased tracks. The tracks, two others from the Bucky Fellini appearance, are on the 1997 compilation, again, Death Rides a Pale Cow. And I Am the Walrus is not a cover of the Beatles song.
And I was hoping it would be.
I
thought maybe I would have something redeeming at that point.
Yeah. Watching Scotty Die was covered by Mischief Brew in 2008 on their split with the Milkmen's Joe Jack Talcum. Watching Scotty Die is my favorite song on this album. It may be my favorite Dead Milkmen song. It's got kind of a weird sort of country sound to it. So like the Violent Femmes, they experiment with different genres of music. And Watching Scotty Die is just this sad song about this guy who has this house next to a chemical plant and his son is slowly dying. I know it's kind of sad, but it's so funny. The tracks are The Pit, Take Me to the Specialist, I Am the Walrus, Watching Scotty Die, Going to Graceland, Big Time Operator, Instant Club Hit, You'll Dance to Anything, The Badger Song, Taco Land, City of Mud, Rocket Ship, Nitro Burning Funny Cars, which is also a good song, Surfing Cow, theme from Blood Orgy of the Atomic Fern, Jellyfish Heaven, and there's an instrumental track that runs 34 seconds. That's a hidden track at the end.
You forgot one song.
What?
We Fucking Suck.
There is no We Fucking Suck. Although
there should have been.
I think Bucky Fellini is my favorite album by then, even more than Beelzebubba. Even though I really like Punk Rock Girl, I don't think it's as good as Watching Scotty Die. And after I put this list together, I listened to Big Lizard in My Backyard again one time just to make sure all the songs were on there. The same with Eat Your Paisley. But for Bucky Fellini, I listened to it 3 or 4 times in a row just because I love it. I mean, I had it on cassette and I wore the cassette out. And what's amazing is these guys did all 3 of these albums in 3 years. It was 85, 86, and 87. Bam, 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 bam. Again, I don't have much on the Dead Milkmen. Just get out there and listen to them. They're awesome. I love these guys. They are one of my favorites, and they encapsulate the humor and sardonic ideas I had in my youth and in my adulthood. Geoffrey disagrees.
Well, I appreciate your coverage on that kind of stuff. I can at least appreciate that. If you like Zig's musical list, then give this a listen and see what you think. If you want to trust me, fucking don't do it. Take a piece of your life back and don't fucking do it. Oh my God. And Zig froze up on us. Uh-oh. He froze up right at the wrong time. There he is. Now he's unfrozen. Who's listening?
Clayton.
Oh. Yeah,
Love you, Clayton. Hope you're listening.
I don't know. Terrible. All right. Well, with that, we will step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Wikipedia, Smithsonian Magazine, Investigation Discovery, The Crime Wire, and Legends of America. And this is the story of the Sodder children disappearance. So, Zig froze again. I wonder if it's on my end. You there, Zig? Hello. Are you there?
Yeah, you froze that time.
Oh, did I freeze up? Maybe it's on my end. All right, we'll see. So, did you get me the Sodder children disappearance?
The Sodder children disappearance.
Awesome. Well, as I originally had a different episode here, but I was looking at dates of release and everything like this. So since this is Christmas Eve when this releases, how about a nice Christmas Eve story to tuck the kids in with?
Hey, very nice. Is it going to be like Silent Night, Deadly Night?
I haven't seen that yet. I need to. Or wait, I'm thinking of a different movie. I'm thinking of, was it Deadly Santa? No.
Werewolf Santa?
No, not Werewolf Santa. There's another Santa movie out. Two Geeks and a Microphone covered it. It's with the guy from Stranger
Krampus?
Things. No, it's with the guy from Stranger Things, the cop from Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, I think it is called Deadly Santa with David
Yeah,
Harbour.
yeah, David Harbour, something like that. But no, this is not like that. So for nearly 4 decades, anyone driving down Route 16 near Fayetteville, West Virginia, could see a billboard bearing the grainy image of 5 children, all dark-haired and solemn-eyed, their names and ages. Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Lewis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, stenciled beneath, along with the speculation about what happened to them. Fayetteville, West Virginia was and is a small town with a main street that doesn't run longer than 100 yards, and rumor always played a larger role in the case than evidence. No one even agreed on whether the children were still dead or alive. On Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1945, a fire destroyed the Sodder residence. At the time, it was occupied by George Sodder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children. One son was away in the Army. During the fire, George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 children escaped. The bodies of the other 5 children have never been found. The surviving Sodder family believed for the rest of their lives that the 5 missing children survived. The Sodders never rebuilt the house, instead converting the site to a memorial garden to the lost children. And in the 1950s, as they came to doubt that the children had perished, the family put up a billboard at the site alongside Route 16, as I mentioned before, with pictures of the 5, offering a reward for information that would bring closure to the case. That billboard remained standing until shortly after Jenny Sodder's death in 1989. So for 49 years.
Wow.
In support of their belief that the children survived, the Sodders had pointed to a number of unusual circumstances before and during the fire. George disputed the Fayetteville Fire Department's finding that the blaze was electrical in origin, noting that he had recently had the house rewired and inspected. George and his wife suspected arson, leading to theories that the children had been taken by the Sicilian mafia, perhaps in retaliation for George's outspoken criticism of the fascist government of his native Italy. State and federal efforts to investigate the case further in the early 1950s yielded no information. The family did, however, later receive what may have been a picture of one of the boys as an adult during the 1960s, and the last surviving daughter, along with their grandchildren, continued to publicize the case into the 21st century in both media and online. George Sodder was born with the name Giorgio Soddu in Puglia, Sardinia, Italy in 1895. He immigrated to the United States 13 years later with an older brother who went back home as soon as both boys had cleared customs at Ellis Island. For the rest of his life, George, as he became known, would not talk much about why he left his homeland, and Sodder eventually found work on the railroads in Pennsylvania, carrying water and other supplies to workers. After a few years, he took more permanent work as a driver in Smithers, West Virginia, and then he started his own trucking company, initially hauling fill dirt to construction sites and later hauling coal mined in the region. Jenny Cipriani, who was a storekeeper's daughter in Smithers, had also immigrated from Italy to her childhood and became George's wife. They had 10 children between 1923 and 1943. The Sodders settled outside of nearby Fayetteville, which had a large population of Italian immigrants, in a 2-story timber frame house 2 miles north of town. In 1923, they had the first of their 10 children, and as George's business prospered, they became one of the most respected middle-class families around, in the words of one local official. However, George had strong opinions about many subjects and was not shy about expressing them, sometimes alienated people. In particular, his strident opposition to Italian dictator Benito Mussolini had led to some strong arguments with other members of the immigrant community. The last of the Sodder children, Sylvia, was born in 1942. By then, their oldest son, Joe, who was 21, had left home to serve in the military during World War II. The following year, Mussolini was deposed and executed. However, George's criticism of the late dictator had left some hard feelings. In October of 1945, a visiting life insurance salesman, after being rebuffed, warned George that the house would, quote,
would go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed. And he attributed all this to the, quote, dirty remarks you had been making about Mussolini. Another visitor to the house, ostensibly seeking work, took the occasion to go around the back and warn George that a pair of fuse boxes would cause a fire someday. As I'd stated before, George was puzzled by the observation, since he had just had the house rewired when an electric stove was installed, and the local electric company had said afterwards it was safe. In the weeks before Christmas that year, George's older son had also noticed a strange car parked along the main highway through town, its occupants watching the younger Sodder children as they returned home from school. So the family celebrated on Christmas Eve 1945. Marion, who was 19, the oldest daughter, had been working at a dime store in downtown Fayetteville, and she surprised three of her younger sisters, Martha, Jenny, and Betty, with new toys she had brought them as gifts. The younger children were so excited they asked their mother if they could stay up past what would have been their usual bedtime. And at 10 p.m., Jenny told them they could stay up a little later as long as the two oldest boys who were still awake, Maurice and his older brother Louis, remembered to put the cows in and feed chickens before going to bed themselves. George and the two oldest boys, John and George Jr., who had spent the day working with their father, were already asleep. After reminding the children of those remaining chores, she took Sylvia upstairs with her and they went to bed together. The telephone rang at 12:30 a.m. Jenny woke and went downstairs to answer it. The caller was a woman whose voice she didn't recognize, asking for a name she was not familiar with, and there was the sound of laughter and clinking glasses in the background. Jenny told the caller she had reached the wrong number, later recalling that the woman had a weird laugh. She then hung up and returned to bed. As she did, she noticed that the lights were still on and the curtains were not drawn, two things the children normally attended to when they stayed up later than their parents. Marion had fallen asleep on the living room couch, so Jenny assumed the other children who had stayed up later had gone back to the attic where they slept. So she closed the curtains, turned out the lights, and returned to bed. At 1 a.m., Jenny was awakened by the sound of an object hitting the house's roof with a loud bang and then a rolling noise. She listened but heard nothing further, so she went back to sleep, but after another half hour, she woke up again smelling smoke. When she got up again, she found that the room George used for his office was on fire around the telephone line and the fuse box, and Jenny woke him, and he in turn woke up his older sons. Both parents and four of their children, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., escaped the house. They frantically yelled to the children upstairs, but heard no response, and they could not go up there as the stairway itself was already on fire. John said in his first police interview after the fire that he went up to the attic to alert his siblings sleeping there, although he later changed his story to say he only called up there and did not actually see him. Efforts to find aid and rescue the children were unexpectedly complicated. Their phone didn't work, so Marion ran to a neighbor's house to call the Fayetteville Fire Department. A driver on the nearby road had also seen the flames and called from a nearby tavern, but they were also unsuccessful, either because they couldn't reach the operator or because the phone line there turned out to be broken. It was either the neighbor or another passing motorist that eventually was successful in reaching the fire department from another phone in the center of town, and they actually personally found the fire chief before help could be summoned.
We got the fire chief up out of bed.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this. I'll bring it up here. We'll talk about it again later. Because of the way it was set up, they had to go to a phone tree. And one fireman would call another fireman who would call another fireman who would call another before they could get everybody aroused.
Okay.
During
Christmas Eve.
Right. George, this time barefoot, attempted to climb the house's outside wall and broke open a window, cutting his arm in the process. He took frantic stock of what he knew. 2-year-old Sylvia, whose crib was in their bedroom, she was safe outside, as was 17-year-old Marion and two sons, 23-year-old John and 16-year-old George Jr., who had fled out the upstairs bedroom they shared, singeing their hair on the way out. He figured Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty still had to be up there, cowering in the two bedrooms on either end of the hallway, separated by a staircase that was now engulfed in flames. George and his sons decided they could use the ladder to go to the attic to rescue the other children, but it wasn't in its usual spot, resting against the house, and nobody could find it nearby. They then thought about their water barrel, which could have been used to extinguish the fire, but it was frozen solid.
December, yeah.
Uh-huh.
George then tried to pull up both of the trucks he used in his business up to the house and use them to climb the attic window, but neither of them would start despite having worked perfectly the previous day. Frustrated, the 6 Sodders who had escaped had no choice but to watch the house burn down and collapse over the next 45 minutes. They assumed the other 5 children had perished in the blaze. The fire department, low on manpower due to the war and relying on the individual firefighters to call each other, as we talked about, did not respond until 8 a.m., and they were only 2.5 miles away.
This started at 1:30.
Mm-hmm. They didn't get there until 8 a.m., at which point the Sodders' home had been reduced to a smoking pile of ash.
Yeah. Yes, but that fire would not be hot enough to burn up bones.
We talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
That comes up in this story. Chief F.J. Morris said the next day that the already slow response was further hampered by his inability to drive the fire truck, requiring that he wait for someone else to arrive who was available. The firefighters, one of whom was a brother of Jenny's, could do little but look through the ashes that were left in the Sodders' basement. By 10 a.m., Morris told the Sodders that they had not found any bones, as might have been expected if the other children had been in the house as it burned. According to another account, they did find a few bone fragments and internal organs, but chose not to tell the family. And it's also been noted by modern fire professionals that their search was cursory at best. Nevertheless, Morris believed that the 5 children unaccounted for had died in the fire, suggesting it had been hot enough to burn their bodies completely. Morris told George to leave the site undisturbed so that the state's fire marshal office can conduct a more thorough investigation. However, after 4 days, George and his wife could not bear the site anymore, so he bulldozed 5 feet of dirt over the site with the intention of converting it to a memorial garden for the lost children. The local coroner convened an inquest the next day, which held that the fire was an accident caused by faulty wiring. But among the jurors was the man who had threatened George that his house would be burned out and his children destroyed in retribution for his anti-Mussolini remarks. Interesting side note there.
Mm-hmm.
Death certificates for the 5 children were issued on December 30th. The local newspaper contradicted itself, stating that all the bodies had been found, but then later in the same story reporting that only part of one body was recovered. George and Jenny were too grief-stricken to attend the funeral on January 2nd, 1946, but their surviving children did. Not long after, as they tried to rebuild their lives, the Sodder family started to question the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical fire, the family's Christmas lights remained on throughout the fire's early stages when the power should have been out. Then they found the ladder that had been missing from the side of the house at the bottom of an embankment 75 feet away. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that the house's phone line had not been burned through the fire as he initially thought, but cut by someone who had been willing and able to climb 14 feet up the pole and reach 2 feet away from it in order to do so. There was a man whom neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire, and he was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and claimed he had been the one to cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire. However, no record identifying the suspect exists, and why would he have wanted to cut any utility lines to the Sodder house while stealing the block and tackle? It's never been explained.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny did say in 1968 that if he had cut the power line, she and her husband, along with their other 4 children, would have never been able to make it out of the house.
Yeah.
Jenny also had trouble accepting Morris's belief, and all the traces of the children's bodies had been burned completely in the fire. Many of the household appliances had been found, still recognizable in the ash, along with fragments of the tin roof. She contrasted the results of the fire with a newspaper account of similar house fire that she had read around the same time that killed a family of 7, and skeletal remains of all the victims were reported to have been found on the case. Jenny burned small piles of animal bones, chicken bones, beef joints, and pork chop bones to see if they would be completely consumed, but none ever were. An employee of a local crematorium she contacted told her that human bones remain even after bodies are burned at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours, far longer and hotter than the fire in the house could have been. The Sodders' truck failure to start was also considered. George believed they had been tampered with, perhaps by the same man who stole the block and tackle and cut the phone line. However, one of George's son-in-law told the Charlotte Gazette-Mail in 2013 that he had come to believe that Sodder and his sons might have, in their haste to start the truck, flooded the engines. Some accounts have suggested the wrong number phone call to the Sodder house might have also been connected to the fire. However, investigators later located the woman who made the call, and she confirmed it had been a wrong number on her part.
She was just drunk.
Yep.
Drunk calling from a bar.
As spring approached, the Sodders, as they would, planted flowers in the soil, bulldozed over the house. Jenny tended to it carefully for the rest of her life. However, further developments in early 1946 reinforced the family's belief that the children they were memorializing might in fact be alive somewhere. Evidence soon emerged indicating that the fire had not started an electrical fault and was instead set deliberately. The driver of a bus that passed through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve said he had seen people throwing balls of fire at the house. Remember the thumps on the roof?
Molotov cocktails.
A few months later, when the snow melted, Sylvia found a small, hard, dark green rubber ball-like object in the brush nearby. George, recalling his wife's account of the loud thump on the roof before the fire, said it looked like a pineapple bomb hand grenade or some other incendiary device used in combat. The family later claimed that, contrary to the fire marshal's conclusion, the fire had started on the roof, although by then there was no way to prove it. Other witnesses claimed to have seen the missing Sodder children themselves. One woman who had been watching the fire from the road said she had seen some of them peering out of the back of a passing car while the house was burning. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said she had served them breakfast the next morning and noted the presence of a car with Florida license plate in the rest stop parking lot as well. The Sodders then hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley from the nearby town of Gauley Bridge to look into the case. Tinsley informed the family that the insurance salesman who had threatened Georgia's anti-Mussolini settlements had been on the coroner's journey that ruled the fire an accident, as I stated that before.
Yep.
He also learned of rumors around Fayetteville that despite his reports to the Sodders that no remains had been found in the ashes, that Morris had found a heart which he later packed into a metal box and secretly buried. Morris had apparently confessed this to a local minister, who in turn confirmed it to George. George and Tinsley went to Morris and confronted him with this news, and Morris agreed to show the two where he had buried the metal box, and they dug it up. They took what they found inside the box to a local funeral director, who, after examining it, told them it was in reality fresh beef liver that had never been exposed to fire. Later, more rumors circulated around Fayetteville that Morris had afterwards admitted the box with the liver had indeed not come from the fire originally. He had supposedly placed it there in the hope the Sodders would find it and be satisfied that the missing children had indeed died in the fire and stop the investigation. On one occasion, George saw a magazine photo of a group of ballet dancers in New York City, one of whom looked like his missing daughter, Betty. He drove all the way to the girl's school, where his repeated demands to see the girl were refused. George also tried to interest the FBI in investigating what he considered a kidnapping. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover personally responded to his letter saying, quote, "Although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come with the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau." Now,
J. Edgar Hoover, and I would like to go on record as saying this, was a piece of shit.
I don't disagree with you.
His entire life. And he hurt our country because he was a piece of shit in the position he was in.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
And I don't care if we get letters. Fuck J. Edgar Hoover. Please go ahead.
He did add that if local authorities requested the Bureau's assistance, he would, of course, direct agents to assist, but the Fayetteville police and fire departments declined to do so.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Feds can take over any investigation they want.
I know. In August of 1949, George was able to persuade Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through the dirt at the house site. After a very thorough search, artifacts, including a dictionary that had belonged to the children and some coins, were found. Several small bone fragments were unearthed, determined to have been human vertebrae. The bone fragments were sent to Marshall T. Newman, a specialist at the Smithsonian Institution, and they were confirmed to be lumbar vertebrae, all from the same person. Newman's report said since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death would have been 16 or 17 years. The top limit of age should have been about 22 since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. Thus, given this age range, it is not very likely that these bones were from any of the 5 missing children, since the oldest, Maurice, had been 14 at the time, although the report offered that the vertebrae of a boy his age sometimes were advanced enough to appear at the lower end of the range. Newman did add that the bones showed no signs of exposure to flames, and further, he agreed that it was very strange that those bones were the only ones found, since a wood fire of such short duration should have left full skeletons of all the children behind. The report concluded that the vertebra had, instead, most likely come from the dirt that George had used to bulldoze the site, and later Tinsley supposedly confirmed that the bone fragments had come from a cemetery in nearby Mount Hope, but he couldn't explain why they had been taken from there or how they came to be at the fire site.
Someone planted them.
I think so. The Smithsonian returned the bone fragments to George in September of 1949, according to its records, and their current location is unknown. The investigation and its findings attracted national attention, and the West Virginia legislature held 2 hearings on the case in 1950. Afterwards, however, Governor Oakey Patterson and State Police Superintendent W.E. Burchett told the Sodders the case was hopeless and closed it at the state level. The FBI then decided it had jurisdiction as a possible interstate kidnapping, but dropped the case after 2 years of following fruitless leads. With the end of official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodder family did not give up hope. They had flyers printed up with pictures of the children offering a $5,000 reward, which was soon doubled, for information that would have settled the case for even one of them. And then again in 1952, they put up the billboard at the same site at the house with the same information, and it would in time become a landmark for traffic through Fayetteville on U.S. Route 19, which is today Route 16.
Excuse me.
The family's efforts soon brought another reported sighting of the children after the fire. Ida Crutchfield, a woman who ran a Charleston hotel, claimed to have seen the children at approximately a week afterwards. She said in a statement, "I do not remember the exact date the children come in, but it was around midnight with 2 men and 2 women, all of whom appeared to her to be of Italian extraction. When she attempted to speak to the children, one of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian, and immediately the whole party stopped talking to me." She recalled that they left the hotel early the next morning, and investigators today do not, however, consider her story credible, as she had only first seen photos of the children 2 years after the fire, 5 years before she came forward. George followed up leads in person, traveling to the areas from where tips had come. There was a woman from St. Louis, Missouri, who claimed Martha was being held in a convent there. A bar patron in Texas claimed to have overheard 2 other people making incriminating evidence about a fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia some years before, but none of those proved significant. When George later heard that a relative of Jenny's in Florida had children that looked similar to his, the relative had to prove the children were his own before George was satisfied.
Wow.
In 1967, George went to the Houston area to investigate another tip. A woman there had written to the family saying that Lewis had revealed his true identity to her one night after having too much to drink, and she believed that he and Maurice were both living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law Grover Paxton were unable to speak with her. Police there were able to help find the 2 men she had indicated, but they denied being the missing sons. And Paxton said years later that doubts about that denial lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life.
Oh, man.
George sadly traveled the country to investigate each lead, always returning home without any answers. There was another letter they received that year that brought the Sodders what they believed was the most credible evidence that at least Lewis was still alive. One day, Jenny found a letter in the mail addressed to her, postmarked in Central City, Kentucky, with no return address. And inside was the picture of a young man around 30 years old with features strongly resembling Lewis's, who would have been 30 if he had survived. And on the back was written, "Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A90132 or 35, one of the 2. The family then hired another private detective to go to Central City and look into the missive, but he never reported back to the Sodders, and they were unable to locate him afterwards. The picture nonetheless gave them hope. They added it to the billboard, leaving Central City out of it and any other published information out of fear Lewis might come to harm. and put an enlargement of it over their fireplace. George admitted to the Charleston Gazette-Mail late the next year that the lack of information had been like hitting a brick wall and that they couldn't go any further, but he nevertheless vowed to continue. He admitted in another interview around the time that time was running out for us, but we only want to know if they did die in the fire, we want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them. George Sodder died in 1969. Jenny and her surviving children, except John, who never talked about the night of the fire except to say the family should accept what happened and moved on with their lives, continued to seek answers to their questions about the missing children's fate. After George's death, Jenny stayed in the family home, putting up fencing around it and adding additional rooms. For the rest of her life, she wore black in mourning and tended to the garden at the side of the former house. And then after her death in 1989, the family finally took down the weather-worn billboard. The surviving Sodder children, joined by their own children, continued to publicize the case and investigate leads. They, along with older Fayetteville residents, have theorized that the Sicilian Mafia was trying to extort money from George, and the children may have been taken by someone who knew about the planned arson and said they would be safe if they left the house. They were possibly taken to Italy. If the children had survived all those years and were aware that their parents and siblings had survived too, the family believes they may have avoided contact in order to keep them from harm. Sylvia Sodder Paxton, the youngest of the surviving Sodder siblings, died in 1921. She, of course, was in the house of the night of the fire, which she said was her earliest memory. She said to the Gazette-Mail in 2013, "I was the last one of the kids to leave home." She and her father often stayed up late talking about what might have happened. She said, "I experienced their grief for a very long time." She believed that her siblings survived that night and assisted with efforts to find them and publicize the case. And her daughter said in 2006, she promised my grandparents she wouldn't let the story die and that she would do everything she could. In the 21st century, the family's efforts to have come to include online forums like websleuths.com in addition to media coverage. The increase in the latter have led some who have examined the case to believe that the children did in fact die in 1945. George Bragg was a local author who wrote about the case in 2012 in his book, West Virginia's Unsolved Mysteries. He believes that John was telling the truth in his original account and that he tried to physically awaken his siblings before fleeing the house. He allows that the conclusion may still not be correct. He said, quote, "Logic tells you that they possibly did burn up in the fire, but you can't always go by logic." Stacey Horn, who did a segment on the case for National Public Radio around its 60th anniversary in 2005, also believes the children's death in the fire is the most plausible solution. In a contemporaneous post on her blog with material she had cut right after her story for the Times, she noted that the fire had continued to smolder all night after the house collapsed, and 2 hours was not enough time to search the ash thoroughly. Even if it had, the firefighters might have not have known what to look for. She said, however, there is enough genuine weirdness about this whole thing that if someday it is learned that children did not die in the fire, I won't be shocked. Mm-hmm. And finally, in 2022, the History Channel aired an episode of its series, History's Greatest Mysteries, that detailed the events of the case.
Wow.
And that is the story of the Sodder children disappearance.
Well, thank you for that, sir. That's a weird one.
I know.
It may not be a murder at all.
It may not be. It's just it's one of those that I've covered from time to time, disappearances that we don't have answers for.
Yeah.
But this one, was really so highly publicized and still going on as 2022. They did something on the History Channel about it. It's just just a wild story, and without any bone fragments, I wonder what happened to the children. Who knows? Who knows? It's just a weird one. So thanks for taking that journey with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Yes, this will be Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas. Hope you're enjoying your Nerdery and Murdery on Christmas Eve.
Whoop, whoop.
That'll take us to the end of another recording week. And as always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub for everything about us. You can find links to our episode as well as pictures of the things we talk about, and also link to our YouTube page that Zig so often updates.
Yes, this YouTube page will have this episode and all of the songs that we talked about before. Go there and check them out. I love that face. One more time. Thank you.
if you want to destroy your ears, go listen to Dead Milkmen, whatever. On our website, you can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something there. That helps with the cost of our show, as there are costs that are associated with keeping the show on the air and broadcasting. Along with that, you can also find the link to our Patreon site, where if you wish to become a donor and help us with the show, we really do appreciate each and every one of our donors.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our contact that may be looking for the information we're talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.